Afternoon. How y'all doing? Still sure. Happy Labor Day, as Bill said. What happens on Labor Day? Like 22 years. Are there like picnics and swimming and stuff today?
We don't know.
Y'all don't know? You're right here with us? All right, well, let me know. All right, just a recap this week's game. Obviously excited for win number 1 against a quality opponent on the road in a great environment. You know, certainly you have to give credit to Louisiana and Coach Napier. You know, there were certain points during the game where it looked like we were going to run away with it. I think at one point, very, very early in the fourth quarter, it was 35-14. We were driving, and you know, they just kept fighting and scratching and clawing and brought it back. And I said, I think they're going to have a very good year. But you know, like I said, certainly excited to get you know, road win number 1 and win number 1 on the season. You know, you were kind of looking and doing a little bit of research after the game that you know, week 1 was a little bit crazy. There were 25 instances of Power 5 teams playing group of 5s or FCSs, or group of 5 teams playing FCSs, and they were within 14 points and 8 upsets. So you know, I think that's the day and age of college football with scholarships and the transfer portal and things like that, where you saw a bunch of close games against, you know, Power 5s and group of 5s and group of 5s and FCSs. So I thought that was an interesting stat there. Certainly appreciate our fan base for traveling to New Orleans and being a great local presence on a road game. You know, like any week 1, there were plenty of positives, but still a bunch for us to clean up. You know, offensively, our focus heading into the game and this season was to increase the efficiency and explosiveness of our pass game. And I thought we took a positive stride there with our completion percentage and number of throws we were able to make down the field and complete accurately. Defensively, you know, all the great things we did last year, being number 1 in the SEC in total defense and scoring defense. We weren't a great team at creating turnovers. We created 5 against Louisiana, so I thought that was a great positive. And then special teams, you know, wanted to work on our punting and making big plays, and you know, having Tucker be able to, you know, pin Louisiana down there at the 1-yard line twice. And I thought that was a great sequence when we talk about playing complementary football with all 3 phases working in concert with each other. Punted them down to the 1, 3 and out, punt return, and then the next play a touchdown. I thought that was a great microcosm of how we'd like the game to be played. So certainly, you know, positive there with our special teams. In terms of performance indicators, things that we look at on Sunday to determine how the game went, and usually hence the term, they're a great indicator of victory or defeat. Explosive play margin we won, turnover margin we won, third down conversion percentage we won, but just by a slim amount. And then red zone touchdowns was a push. So that was a very positive there. But we watched the film, we made the corrections. We're going to move on from it. Just a couple of notes. Colin Hill's rushing total of 197 was the 3rd highest in the FBS this week and the highest in the SEC. And Tommy's completion percentage of 67% was the highest by a Mississippi State quarterback, attempting 30 or more passes in the game since November 19th of 2016 against Arkansas. All right. Our players of the week on offense, Colin Hill. On defense, Cam Dantzler with fumble recovery and interception and 7 tackles. And then special teams was Tucker Day. Our scout team players of the week on offense for the defense, Jalen Maiden. On defense for the offense, new walk-on young man, did a real nice job, Nick Jarrett. And then special teams, it was Cody Swanson. Our student athletes of the week, which we do every Monday, Quentin Torber and Charles Cross. Wrapping that up and moving on to Southern Miss. You know, certainly excited to be back at Davis Wade in front of our home fans for the first time this year, and a huge, you know, in-state game. You know, with a lot of kids and familiarity and coaches with each other. I'm sure we're going to get on the field, and you look at the 2 deep in all 3 phases for Southern Miss, and there's a bunch of kids that hail from the state of Mississippi. So I'm sure our guys will be excited about that. I'm sure they'll be excited, and I think it'll be great for the fan bases as well. The 3rd time since 1990 that Southern Miss will be playing at Davis Wade, and 1st since 2014. And I think it's going to be a great atmosphere and a great game. Coach Hobson at Southern Miss is 21-16, 54-33 overall, native of Vicksburg and an Ole Miss grad, and generally considered one of the top defensive minds in all of college football. Has led Southern Miss to winning seasons in his first 3 years, and at Alcorn they won back-to-back SWAC championships in his last 2. Offensively, their coordinator is Buster Faulkner. He handles the quarterbacks. Spread offense with a mix of 11, 10, and 12 personnel. Scored 38 in the first game against Alcorn, 96 rushing, 293 in the air. Jack Abraham's the quarterback, as I mentioned, threw one touchdown, accurate, good touch, very smart. They have a bunch of running backs that they run through there, Travinsky, Mosley, D. Baker, and then Steven Anderson, then wide receiver Jordan Mitchell and Jalen Adams, and Mitchell had 133 yards the last game. Defensively, Tim Billings is their coordinator. He coaches the safeties. They play a base three down front with a mix of 2 high and 1 high zones with a bunch of pressure, and they are a very, very aggressive, fast, athletic, and salty group. You look at their numbers from last year, they're third in the country in total defense and created 22 turnovers and picked up where they left off against Alcorn, giving up only 10 points. Up front on the D-line, number 99, Jacquez Turner had 33 tackles, 10 for loss, and 5 sacks last year. Incredibly active. Rasheem Booth, 48 tackles, 10 for loss, and 4 sacks. Very productive blitzer. And Kyle Hemby, 51 tackles, 6 interceptions, 9 PBUs, an all-conference USA selection last year. So certainly, I think I saw somewhere also they had, what was it? They have held 5 of their last 7 opponents to under 300 yards of total offense. So that's a pretty darn impressive stat, particularly in this day and age of spread football. Special teams, it's split amongst the staff. They averaged 35.3 yard kickoff return average and scored a touchdown. That's 5th in the NCAA. 46 per punt return with 1 touchdown, 1st in the NCAA, both coming last week. 2 return touchdowns in the game is huge. Jalen Adams is the kick returner and the punt returner. Andrew Stein's the kicker, true freshman, 3 for 3 last week with a strong leg, 5 of 7 touchbacks. And then Zach Everett is the punter, 45 yards a punt. Certainly a lot of hang time, and only 8 of his 49 punts were returned last year in 2018. So, certainly expecting Southern Miss to come in very prepared, very well coached, to play with a lot of passion. Certainly in an in-state game, I think our guys, learned a lot from week 1 about ourselves and the things we need to do to be successful and play great complementary football. Got a lot of guys who made their first start and a lot of inexperienced guys, some much needed reps. So, we come off the practice field yesterday feeling good, and off day today, making our game plans, and then we'll get to practice tomorrow.
Questions? We'll go to Mike T. Joel, or David, and then Joel.
Coach, can you update the status on Keaton Thompson going into this week?
Yep, met with KT yesterday in probably our 4th or 5th meeting throughout the past 7 days. We talked and decided that he had explored his options after entering the portal, and decided it was in his best interest as a player and for us as a team for him to return. So KT sat in a team meeting yesterday, went through practice, and we'll get him cranked back up on Tuesday.
Joel.
Forward and player status is Kareem Walker. Is there any finality with that? I know you've been asked a million times.
I promise you, instead of y'all having to continue to ask, I promise you the next time I have a solid concrete update, I want it as much as you do. Unfortunately, it's things that are out of my control, so it is still ongoing, and then as soon as I have a definitive answer, I'll let you guys know to kind of, so you can quit asking and I can quit saying I don't know. As soon as I know, I'll let you know, I promise.
I have a couple questions. The first, on the injuries, do you have an update on those guys?
If you ask who, I can give it to you.
First of all, the offensive lineman, Darrell Williams and Darren Parker.
DP, Darrell, and Evans Wilkerson were all lower body, and they're all day-to-day, so they come in yesterday, got some treatment. Today will be a big day coming in on their own, and then we'll see where they're at tomorrow going into practice. To me, they're all day-to-day.
And Kylan?
Kylan practiced yesterday, so
Okay.
he's got dinged up a little bit there at the end, but he practiced.
On the offensive line, I know the injuries kind of muddied the waters a little bit, but even before that, y'all were putting different guys in there, and I think every single possession, y'all had a different offensive line at some point, a different guy in there. The one constant on the line was Tyree Phillips. He played left tackle,
Yeah.
I think 68 of the 70 snaps. What was it about him that you wanted him in that spot the whole game? And just how did you feel like the offensive line did, having so many different guys in there and different variations?
Yeah, I think that was your tweet that I read. 11 series and 11 different combinations.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think it goes back to Coach Johnson's philosophy of during the course of practice and even in a game, getting guys playing different positions because you never know what's going to happen. Certainly, we didn't think that all 3 people who were capable of centering the ball to the quarterback were going to get hurt in the same game. Tommy, I think Champion played 3 different positions. I think Tyree may have been the only one that stayed at left tackle, but I think the positional flexibility of guys, being able to play out of both tackles or anywhere along the interior, and like Tommy Champion being a good swing guy. And I think it was the last 2 or 3 snaps of the game with Quincy Sharp. We always do pre-practice quarterback center exchange, but I don't think he had snapped the ball to a quarterback in practice since he's been here. So, but he'd gotten a lot of work at doing it, and he jumped in there and did a good job. So I don't, like I said, we talk about next man in philosophy and the guys jumping in and having the same expectation level of the person they replace. I thought it was a huge credit to Coach Johnson, our O-line, that we were able to kind of seamlessly go through that game with a bunch of guys maybe we weren't expecting to play certain positions.
Steve in the back.
Coach, post-game you said that you thought Tommy's reads were pretty good. Haven't had a chance to go back and grade the film. How would you kind of assess his performance on Saturday?
It was a little less than I thought. I said maybe 3 or 4 coming off. Maybe probably about 2 or 3, or maybe he could have gone to a different place with the ball. But the thing that I liked, he was incredibly decisive. That there were very few times where he dropped back and didn't look like he knew where to go with the ball, and he was working his progressions. He was reading the coverage and doing a great job diagnosing and getting the ball out of his hand quickly. And it was great to see, particularly on 3rd down where we struggled a little bit last year, medium plus in the pass game to get those balls out accurately and be able to extend drives. So I thought on top of him being efficient and accurate and us still being able to push the ball down the field, we were able to get the sticks moving on 3rd down as well.
Coach, obviously you entered this season knowing you had to replace some big holes on defense with some guys going to the NFL. With a couple of suspensions and the injuries early on, just talk about what you saw on film from that group that moving forward and what mistakes have to be corrected.
Yeah, I mean, number one, us creating a bunch of turnovers, so I thought that was a positive. A bunch of new faces playing in out of their first start or their first extended action at this level. I thought that was a positive. Certainly when I sat down with Coach Shoup and the defensive staff and watched the tape and reviewed it yesterday, there were things with identification of formation and communication. Once again, to credit Coach Napier, they did a bunch of things with formation in the sideline and jet motions and doing a lot of window dressing, which I thought was good by them. But as I mentioned on Saturday, Coach Shoup's one of the best defense coordinators in the game. When you really kind of look at it, there's certainly, we talk about missed tackles being part of it in week 1 and just getting your cleats in the ground. That into the 4th quarter, I mean, it was 14 points, and I think they were under 200 yards of total offense. And then they had the one, I think, 10-play, 69-yard drive where we weren't able to get off the field, and then had the 15 or 16-play, 99-yard drive. So they got those 2 scores late. So in all 3 phases, we need to have a finisher's mentality to be able to. You have them against the ropes. You got to be able to finish that thing off, and they kept plugging away and getting back to the center of the ring. So, communication, identification, a little bit better job tackling, and being able to finish. But for the most part, I thought for 3 quarters we played pretty good defensive football.
Along those lines, a lot of new faces on the D-line, interior rotation. What did you see from those guys? And talk about James Jackson's first action over there.
Yeah, the Crumity and Fabian, both being redshirt freshmen, and then James and Kendall. We wanted to get Cam Young and Nathan Pickering in there a little bit, and I think that's something else that we talked about defensively and on offense, just give a little bit more rotation. And ultimately, to put a guy in the game, you don't just want to put him in there for rotation's sake. You have to feel good about what they did during the week in practice and them being able to perform at a high level during the game. And as these weeks progress and guys get more reps under their belt in a game-like situation, would like to cycle some more guys through there up front and kind of linebacker too, maybe. I think you saw Jarion and Martin and some other guys, a bunch played on the back end. I think we got to get some more guys going on the interior of the D-line and also a linebacker.
Danny, then Ben.
Coach, you mentioned LaQuinta Sharp on the offensive line. Hadn't been here very long as a JUCO guy. Just what progress has he made to get that shot this early?
Yeah, he's a guy, and you talk about guys having wide eyes and the situation being too big for him. I mean, he's coming from Columbus, playing for East. I think he's a guy that's played in some high-level college games. I believe he's won the national championship last year, if I'm not mistaken. So he's a guy that really he didn't seem like he had too many nerves. And when he went in there at guard, did a real nice job. And then certainly when we told him, all right, you're playing center, he went in and snapped the ball. I'm excited for him. A good young guy, and once again playing in his first college game, I thought he did really well.
Ben.
you were talking about looking at the film and post-game, we were talking about that play action pass that it seemed like they got. How much of that did you see was window dressing, or was it looking into the backfield?
You talking with Louisiana's
Yeah,
offense
with
or
Louisiana.
defense?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it comes down to, on anything where it's play action, the term I use offensively is great play action distorts the coverage. So whether you're in zone and you're reading your key and you're supposed to be in a certain area that you're defending, hook curl flat, deep outside third, or you're in man-to-man and you're put in conflict that the person you're guarding is blocking and you have to play your run fit and then someone else slips out into the flat. So I think a couple of them were guys getting out of their zones and a couple of them were eye violations, where they were playing the run instead of playing their man. So it was a combination of those things.
And then also just a news thing, is Jace going to be back this week? Is there any update on that?
Jace is available.
And is there any kind of, have you guys made any decision on kicking, who's going to go do what, or is it going to be sort of split?
We'll practice this week and see who does best.
Kind of along the same lines, with suspensions, will those be announced prior to Saturday's game, kind of like last week?
Yes, sir.
All right, and then, you mentioned a little bit in your opening statement about just the emotional component of, these guys growing up playing with or against each other in the state. Just, how much will the emotional component play into Saturday's game?
I think, like anything, when, having been a bus league coach and coached at the FCS level and, worked your way up the group of 5 and the power 5 and been in those situations, whether it was when I was at Akron, going to play Syracuse at the Carrier Dome or NC State, the 2 games we were fortunate enough to win, or Fordham when we went on the road and beat Army and beat Temple. Those are opportunities for guys to maybe kind of be excited about a game where it's, I'd say, on paper, a level up of competition, certainly in-state guys. So I think, they'll be cranked up to come into Davis Wade and play against Mississippi State because it's an in-state school, number 1, and then it's an SEC West opponent, number 2. And also our guys are be excited about it because it's probably kids that they played against, for their 4 years of high school. So I think on both ends of it, I think they'll be excited for the opportunity to play an SEC school, and I think we're excited because, quite frankly, they're a very good football team.
Steve in the back.
Coach, after the sack fumble of Tommy, there was a bit of an incident afterwards when he's walking off the field, the defender kind of brushes up against him, and immediately Tommy Champion and Osiris Mitchell jump in to defend the quarterback. What's your reaction to that? And secondly, what does that do to your locker room when you see those guys kind of have that esprit de corps?
Yeah, one of them glad there wasn't a penalty, so that's positive. But whether it was Ciro and Tommy jumping and grabbing Tommy's back, or I would hope that would happen. I'm pretty certain it would for any of our players. The least thing that we're worried about right now is our leadership and our chemistry, and that's something I've remarked to the team throughout spring ball, throughout fall camp, and now entering the season. That this is a very close knit team, and it's just good to see that when you're back to back or you're in a foxhole, that the guy next to you is going to do what he needs to do to protect you. And I thought that was a good sign because they stood up for their teammate, and it was also a good sign because it wasn't enough to get us a 15-yard penalty.
Ben? And then Joel.
Just on Osiris Mitchell, obviously had a big week this past week. Is that some sort of rapport you've seen between him and Tommy this camp, or was that just kind of a matter of how it went? I mean, I think he had like 11 targets and caught 8 of them.
He did, yeah. That was the one thing that I thought was good for us offensively and for our staff is, I think we talked about last Monday, the element of the unknown in game 1, and for the most part, they played very, very few coverages that we prepared for. A lot more 1 high, a lot more cover 3 or match coverage, what you call it. We had prepared for a lot of 2 high zone. So for us to be able to kind of identify what they were doing, and really, I think 9 different people caught a pass. It just so happened based on the game plan, what we had called, and the coverage they were playing. A lot of balls went to the Z, and it could vary by week. So I think it was a combination of 2 things: the opportunity and the execution.
Joel and Brian?
Couple things real quick. I don't think we asked about Marquis Spencer, probably got injury related, but hey, what's his status?
Lower body day today. Hoping to get him back on Tuesday.
Okay. And with Keaton again, is there some long-term plan in place to maybe try and maintain that red shirt for him, or just, I guess moving forward, what was kind of those talks, and would you be hesitant to use him, like if Tommy's helmet comes off, that sort of thing?
Yeah.
Just kind of the plan for him.
No, we've had, KT, myself, and Coach Bronner, like I said, we met 4 or 5 times and then met again. And some of the details of those conversations are things that everyone's privy to, and some of them are ones that I prefer to keep internal within the team and the staff. But certainly, first and foremost, we have to do what's best for the team as it pertains to, KT's participation in redshirting or not redshirting. And then we gotta do secondarily what's best for the individuals. If we're able to make those work in concert and do them both and get them both accomplished at the same time, we will. But, like us all, it's all day to day. So, we'll take it each situation as it arises. No Tyler today?
He's got
He's
mono.
sick.
Oh, dang.
He's
Yeah.
not
Get
good.
well, Tyler.
Yeah. Also on new stuff, is Alan Love anywhere on his waiver or anything?
His waiver?
Yeah.
No, word, that's still in the appeals process. You know anyone up there? No?
Sorry.
Not a whole lot of penalties on Saturday, but a couple of them, one for the delay of game to start a drive, and then
Yeah.
a substitution infraction on the field goal late in the game. Just, are those to be expected in week one, or how much should be addressed with that?
No, I would say expected, you don't want them to happen. The delay of game one, I thought he was being held up and told not to snap the ball, but ultimately that's my responsibility to get that plane quicker and get them off the sideline, particularly the first play of the series. So I put that one on me for not getting the plane quick enough and telling them to hustle up. And then, to be quite honest, when we had too many people on the field for the field goal, there were so many guys out in so many different positions. We put someone on the field who was actually not in the two deep for a PAT field goal. We were trying to get someone who was on the right side over to the left side, and it just happened also. Probably may have burned a timeout beforehand just to get it organized, but that's what happened there. We got so many people down and so many parts that were moving around. We obviously have too many people on the field, so we can't have that.
You mentioned with the receivers how it was kind of just a happenstance of who was open when,
Yeah.
but I mean, with this group, do you see it as maybe one? I mean, a lot of in your past with Dayton Hamilton or others, you
Yeah.
had kind of one dominant receiver. Do you see this as a group that's more sort of spread the wealth and kind of move the ball wherever?
Yeah, I'm hoping it could be as balanced as possible. I think when you look back, the last year, that probably wasn't representative of what we looked like offensively relative to dispersal to the receivers. Penn State, I think across the board for 17 and 16, it was pretty even in terms of who led the team in receptions, but it was all relatively close. And the thing you can't get caught up on is which specific person. To me, it's about the position. So how many catches or touches did the Z have? Did the slot have? Did the X have? Or did the tight end have? And I think 2 of my 4 years at Fordham, all 3 spots had over 70 catches, all had over 1,000 yards, and the tight end had 50 or more catches both years too. So when it's getting rolling and it's getting cranked and what we're building towards, we hopefully we're able to replicate those numbers and quite frankly a lot of things we did at Penn State as well. We're getting there, slowly but surely.
And you talk about all the time wanting to have your receivers know each spot and be able to move. I mean, how much of that ties into it? Just
I think there's certain guys that are just from a measurable standpoint and a skill set, I don't say pigeonholed, but better suited to just play one. But there's some guys like we talked about Austin Williams. It was great for him to get the opportunity that he did and make some explosive plays and score a touchdown. But he could jump into any of the 3 positions. Zuber could play a couple. We're working with Javante to maybe. But yeah, I think anytime you can find a guy kind of like the offensive line that it doesn't pigeonhole you into playing the person who's necessarily second on the depth chart, but the next best available receiver.
you mentioned the Austin Williams touchdown. Having been able to look back on it, what did you see from him on that play? Or?
That play, I think that was a sudden change opportunity right there where we got the ball, real quick in that field position, and they had been increasing the pressure in the second half, and particularly in the red zone. And I was anticipating usually the play that we run that he scored on is a check, and I kind of called that right off the sideline, anticipating them bringing a zero blitz, and we were fortunate enough that they brought it, and they were in straight man-to-man with no safety help, and it's an option route for him. He took the corner and made the right read. We protected it up against a 7-man pressure, and Tommy threw it in one spot that it could be for him to catch it. Great execution.
Brian and Robbie.
You talked about with your freshmen, the green light, yellow light, red light, and you said that yes, our Saturday's game was a green light game. Is this weekend's game as one of those as well?
Yes, sir.
Malik Deer got a chance to have that big punt return, and was watching the game last night, and they said that you had mentioned that you feel like there was going to be a big return from somebody.
Yeah.
Where does Malik fit in what you want to do? Is he a guy that you want to experiment with, I guess, offensively and give him the ball more, or do you feel like he has a role at punt return? Or what do you kind of see for him this year?
I mean, he's a graduate. I think he's got a master's degree and working on his second. You know, he's a great representative of our program. You know, kind of came in as a highly touted guy. You know, got kind of a little bit of a setback with that knee injury, and you know, he's working his tail off. But you know, he's not a captain or a guy with a C on his chest, but he does as good a job with leadership and mentoring and being a positive influence on his position group and the entire team. And you know, he's kind of like the same mold as Austin, that he could play the Z slot, he could play the H position, and you know, he works at running back too. In a pinch if we needed him, we've been working him at tailback, and he's in on a return game too. So he may not be a guy that, you know, is a starter at any point, but he's a guy that's always going to, you know, find a way to get touches, whether it's on offense or special teams. But to me, he's a guy who's an invaluable asset to our program, because he's a positive influence on his teammates and the younger guys. He always comes in with a great attitude, and he's willing to do whatever's necessary for our team to be successful. Love Malik Deer.
Steve?
Coach, tackling in college football is always a little bit of an issue early in the year. Now that you're in season, how do you kind of address that? How do you rep that out when you've got tackling issues?
Yeah, we general issue. I wouldn't say it was necessarily an issue. I mean, there were some in the first game that we missed, and you know, it's tough to. I mean, you don't bring anybody to the ground during the course of practice for the sake of you know, making sure the guys get to the game healthy. But you know, every day during individual, you know, we do a tackling circuit. You know, where the guys get with their position coach, go a certain amount of time working on a particular tackling drill, and then it rotates through the 4 defensive positions. So that is something that we rep every day in practice.
Anything else? All right.